Well, it was a fun run. Pack it in, friends. Deepseek R1 has officially destroyed the AI industry.
The quote-unquote $6 million AI David is taking down some of the largest titans of this space.
Stock markets have trembled. Meta is running panicked.
OpenAI is shifting up releases.
I'm selling all of my organs online.
Wait, what?
Where we're going, we're not going to need any organs, Gavin. It's the future. It's AI. It's China.
This whole thing was supposed to be sarcastic. There is a lot more to this story, including some breaking news that Deepseek might have pilfered the data from OpenAI.
Oh man, thankfully no one knows what pilfered means. Plus, concerns are mounting over data privacy, data security, market manipulation, government propaganda. I am selling all of my insides.
Is this the dawn of a new AI era, or is this a total tech meltdown?
Please, buy my thyroid now. Good price, great quality, fast shipping.
Plus, China has even more new models coming out, including another open source text model, an open source audio model that is very good, and whatever this Octobot tentacle robot thing is.
Amazon Basics just launched a new glands line. I'm so cooked.
That's right, this is AI for organs, everyone. Everybody, Deepseek is the story of the week. You heard it here first last week. If you were listening to our podcast, obviously you heard us talk about Deepseek R1.
We did not farm the story for engagement enough last week because we were like, hey, it's out, it's impressive, that's a thing. And then the earth shattered.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's so funny to be on something like that and then realize, oh, on 3 days later, suddenly the story gets picked up. So basically, you know, I'm sure everybody here has been following this. If you're listening to the show, Deepseek R1 is a Chinese reasoning model that came out from the company Deepseek. And over the weekend, Monday morning, it basically destroyed the stock market. And the real reason behind this is because people believe that the money that is being spent on AI, including chips from NVIDIA, including the money that OpenAI and Microsoft are spending on AI, is not worth it, Kevin, because supposedly this Chinese company made a AI model that is as good as GPT-4o or O1, the OpenAI's reasoning model, for $5 to $6 million. What do you think about that?
I think compared to the $500 billion that some of these companies are raising for all that infrastructure that you mentioned, the server farms, the energy, the chips, it sounds pretty devastating. And then when you start to peel back the onion, you realize this ogre has layers, Gavin, that there might be more to this story than just, it was just a $5 million dice roll by some amateurs overnight, and that is toppling the AI industry. So
yeah, let's really quickly run through some of the very top level news around what's happened around this, and then we're going to get into why this matters. So first, there's some breaking news just today that supposedly OpenAI and Microsoft are saying that possibly Deepseek or somebody connected to Deepseek pulled a bunch of data from their API to train this model, which I know, Kevin, at this point seems like it's kind of a little sour grapesy, but obviously there's some stuff going on here. And then, of course, you have people reacting to this breaking news with the fact that OpenAI it's a little ironic that OpenAI is asking people to feel bad for them about their data being stolen.
The analogy is that China is Luigi and OpenAI manages healthcare, I think. Like, no one is shedding a tear for the massive AI company that swept everybody's data into their systems to build their amazing machines and profit. No one is playing the tiny violin for the fact that China might have breached their API in a way that's against their terms of service to distill their model. So level setting really quickly. Deepseek R1, if you are really catching up for the first time here, it is a very capable AI model. It thinks or reasons through problems. It scores very, very well on benchmarks. They released it open source, which means we'll get to the privacy concerns later, but it does mean that you can run it locally. You can run it on your own devices in your own secured environment. And it is an impressive model. It works really well. And people are creating these fine-tuned, distilled, even smaller, quantized versions of them, and they're running them on like little $30 Raspberry Pis. So it's a powerful intelligence model that, because it is open source, is getting into very capable hands and getting all these versions made of it. So know that it is real. It's not like fairy dust. It is a real thing.
No, and I think that's why it threw the markets for so much. And also, there's a couple other quick things. Mark Andreessen called this AI's Sputnik moment, meaning that the idea that this was the Russians getting to space before us, which I kind of disagree with a little bit. But also, Meta has scrambled up, Kevin, 4 war rooms, according to the information, to try to figure out how Deepseek did this. So there's real science going on here that you think you have to make sure that you don't dismiss. And not only is it real science, it is at the top of the App Store right now. So this has broken through in a way that we haven't seen an AI model break through to the mainstream until
Probably
since
ChatGPT was released, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I got a text from my mom. I've seen lots of people get texts from their moms talking about what is Deepseek? What is this thing? And then, there's a lot of people I've seen posts online of students using it. And I think that's one thing we have to be aware of, not underestimating, that ChatGPT was driven by a lot of students. And the fact that this model is free, whereas you have to pay for access to O1 right now, at least, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and that's going to change as well. OpenAI has already, Sam kind of congratulated the team on an impressive model release and said that they've got better stuff. Don't worry, investors, and don't worry, consumers. We've got better stuff, but they're pulling their release schedules up, right? Which might mean a little less safety training, a little less guard railing, but they're changing their plans in the wake of this as well. So it is a big deal. But to round out the Microsoft OpenAI of it all, Microsoft apparently detected that someone was hitting OpenAI's API in an unauthorized way months ago. And they're making the claim, at least broadly right now, that might be related to the Deepseek company. Now, when we look at did they really do this thing for 5 or 6 million? No. The final training run that created this model cost that much, but we don't know how much money went into it before then. This doesn't account for the money spent on the researchers and the infrastructure and everything else that goes into it. That was just sort of the final training run. Do we believe that it was done with the there are we talk about it on the show all the time, but there are certain chip restrictions on China, right? Due to us, China is only allowed to have a certain number of chips at a certain, let's say, level of power or quality. They managed to get this model in under those restrictions, according to them. Now, according to others, they're saying, no, that's probably not the case, that via Singapore, China was able to get a bunch more chips. So there's such a cloud of uncertainty and doubt over all of this. But you did say, Gavin, that it's #1 in the App Store, which is sparking a lot of privacy concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I think the privacy concerns are something that are real because people have had privacy concerns over Chinese models in general. Although the back on that is that OpenAI itself has had privacy concerns and what kind of data they can see and everything.
Those are American privacy concerns, Gavin. Those are farm to table, non-GMO, eagle screaming, electric guitar playing, sawdust consuming, patriotic privacy concerns. We don't worry about that.
That's right. Of course, we don't worry about that. Rah, rah, America, and keep moving here. I think that there are a couple things that are really important to understand when it comes to the fact that this is out. One, I think this is showing people pretty close to state-of-the-art, cutting-edge AI right now for free. Also, people are seeing what reasoning models actually say and think, which I think is another interesting thing. When you actually ask Deepseek what it wants, a question, it'll show you direct chain of thought, which OpenAI doesn't, which again, we've mentioned here on the show, but I think that's surprising to a lot of people. I think one thing that we should get into, Kev, a little bit is what it means to have a distilled model and why a distilled model can sometimes be better than a large model. Distillation is a process where you take a large model, sometimes referred to as a parent model, and then you get all the best stuff out of it and you kind of squeeze it down into what's called a child model. And the child model asks the parent model stuff to learn from it. So the distilled model can actually be smaller and cheaper and much better ultimately than the parent model. And if you're a longtime listener of AI for Humans, you remember us talking about an AI researcher named Leopold something. I don't remember what Leopold's last name was a long time ago, where he talked about this. It was a very long essay about how he talked about we were going to get to ASI and had a couple different bumps along the way. Distilled models are a big part of that, right? Because distilling a model means you can take the original training trained model and then kind of filter it down and down and down and make a much better model ultimately that is smaller and cheaper. And that is what Deepseek R1 and Deepseek V3 are. They are distilled models that you can run in a much cheaper way. And that accelerates AI so much because it means that you can spend all of this other money on running inference and compute at different places.
Well, and so when you mentioned that reportedly Meta has these 4 war rooms going on to figure out how DeepSeek did what they did, it's not like they don't like DeepSeek released a paper with math. They show their work. They tell you how they did what they did. Now this is Meta and others scrambling to go, how do we apply what they did to what we do? And other companies are doing that as well. And some of that is distillation. There is a company which we've talked about before on the show called Groq, Groq, not to be confused with Elon's XAI, Groq. I'll digress there. But Groq, hashtag not an ad, they've got basically these custom chips that crunch these models very, very fast and usually very, very cheap. And for example, they did a Deepseek R1 distillation of Llama 70 billion. I'm going to break that down. Deepseek R1 is this Chinese reasoning model that we're talking about. The Llama 70 billion model was an open sourced Meta large language model that they spent tens of millions of dollars, probably billions of dollars ultimately to create, right? They scraped all the data. They created a giant model. So now Groq is taking the reasoning from DeepSeek and applying it to that 70 billion Llama parameter model, distilling that down and running it on their servers. And we're going to talk in a second about these use cases where you can give these incredibly complex problems or coding tasks or whatever, and this model crushes it. It just speeds through it and does what would take, minutes of thinking with a different model, or might take a human hours of thinking, and it does it in seconds. Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. And, one of the things that Satya Nadella, the head of Microsoft, who, of course, all of the heads of all the tech companies had to weigh in on this in some form or another. He tweeted, Javon's paradox strikes again. As AI gets more efficient and accessible, we will see its use skyrocket, turning into a commodity we just can't get enough of. So you may or may not have heard of this term, Javon's paradox. I hadn't heard about it before this week. And, while it sounds like, some guy in a backwater of Alabama who's like trying to decide if he's going to drink his moonshine or if he's going to go like kick it in the middle of the night with the crocodiles, it's actually a really interesting thing. Javon's paradox is the idea that you might think that as things get cheaper, you would spend less money on those things. And in this case, the thing that would get cheaper is compute. But what Satya is saying here, which I think is probably true, and again, kind of leans into the idea why we're going to speed up here rather than like have a major collapse, is that as this compute gets cheaper and more dispersed, the use cases of it will skyrocket. So people will start using it for all sorts of things. And actually, we're going to need a lot more compute, and we're going to need a lot more data centers to run this stuff on. Now, again, Satya's talking his own bag. We all know this, that everybody who's got an invested interest in this makes sense. But I honestly do believe this, right? I do believe that distillation and Deepseek R1 are going to drive a massive, massive spike in AI investment, AI use, and all sorts of other stuff. And this is where we get the sort of transformative things that will really change our world. And Kevin, I think going into this year, I was thinking, well, 2025 is going to be crazy. I mean, it's literally the end of January, and I feel like we've already had like a major tonal shift in what's going on. I can't expect what's going to happen, once OpenAI's O3 comes out, and then, an O4 probably in the summer or the fall. Like, this is going to be a massive year for AI, I feel like.
Yeah. There's already been some projects where they're using DeepSeek, for example, to improve the code of the project itself, right? This is the promise of the AI writing its own tools to make itself better. And reportedly some of that stuff exists now. But to your point, O3 comes out. Well, they use O3 to better itself, and then it helps train O4, and then they distill O4. And it's going to be a wild year. I'll say that. I don't think it's slowing down. I agree with you there. And for everybody, I had so many DMs and texts about like NVIDIA stock or these other tech stocks, crashing. And my response to all of them was like, listen, I don't invest on the back of anything that I'm saying, but I don't think, as impressive as DeepSeek is and the reported numbers being impressive, I don't think that should cause a panic to your point, if this stuff becomes like electricity, we're going to need a lot more power plants, right? We have video models, world models, reasoning models, physical models. We're going to have robotics to power. We're going to want intelligence in every phone and every smart toaster and every television. Like there's going to be plenty of need for servers to power all this. And even as things get more efficient, we're still going to need more to deliver it.
Yeah, all of that is true. I think the one thing that we should dive into very quickly here is that how this has become a geopolitical story, right? Because it's not just about the fact that this AI model is cheaper and better, but the fact that it's from China. And there is a lot of people out there kind of waving their flag of like being scared, right? And there's a lot of people who for a long time in the geopolitical world have kind of held up China as this kind of evil other. And granted, we don't know China's intentions in a lot of ways, but people do believe that some of this, is a psyop, right? There's many people out there who are, whether it's conspiratorially thinking or not, they think that China is doing this and releasing this stuff now to try to take down American economy, to try to kind of take back some sort of a lead in AI, and that they might be hiding some sense of how they did this.
Gavin, it's time to play America's fastest growing game show craze. Who twatted that tweet? Who tweet?
Okay, give me the twat. Give me the twat and we'll see what happens.
The 5 million number is bogus. It is pushed by a Chinese hedge fund to slow investment in American AI startups, service their own shorts against American titans like NVIDIA, and hide sanction evasion. America is a fertile bed for psyops like this because our media apparatus hates our technology companies, even though it's owned by them, and wants to see President Trump fail. That is a serious tweet to hath been twatted. And who is the Twitter behind that twatted tweet, Gavin?
I think it's a guy with long hair and a goatee that somehow keeps getting longer. And we love this guy because he's definitely out there doing interesting stuff. I assume that's Palmer Luckey, right, Kevin?
That's right.
Palmer Luckey.
That is Palmer Luckey. For those who don't know, former Oculus CEO, now CEO of Anduril, big defense contractor, smart human being by all accounts, very, very well versed in AI as well, uses it in their products, and I think has been pretty attuned to the space for years. But Gavin very clearly planting the flag in the propaganda camp, saying this is pure China psyop.
Yeah, and there's another big story that the U.S. Navy has already banned Deepseek due to ethics and safety concerns. CNBC is reporting that. So that there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, this is such a big deal that Trump responded to it. We have a little response from what he had to say about the Deepseek panic, let's call it.
The release of Deepseek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser focused on competing to win, because we have the greatest scientists in the world. Even Chinese leadership told me that. They said, you have the most brilliant scientists in the world in Seattle and various places.
Okay, so it's a massive wake-up call, and it's also a good thing because it could save us money.
It's always a fascinating experience to listen to that person talk about science stuff. But, here we are. Like, I think this is an interesting conversation point where it has become the topic of conversation for the president of the United States to respond to AI news. So clearly, Kevin, we are on a pathway to gold. I mean, here, I wanted to be a governor for a long time. I wanted to be a governor of some, I don't need a big state. Like, give me, I don't know, like North Dakota. And then I want to be like Governor King. This is the start. I can start here. I'm so excited. This is clearly the answer.
Congratulations. I'm glad I was here for your origin story, Gavin. And not that we started this podcast to dive deep into politics, but the two fields are very intertwined right now, AI and politics. So on the heels of that, President Trump announced the U.S. is going to place tariffs on all semiconductors and pharmaceuticals that are imported from Taiwan, it could be a potentially very big deal. Now, there are plenty of companies that are opening fabrication plants within the U.S., which would help end around that. And I think that is the intent behind these tariffs, is to get people to start manufacturing here. But the speed with which we need to get chips and The already inflated costs have some people shooting flares in the sky saying this is actually going to do more harm than anything else, than any regulations ever would have on like AI safety, for example. So I don't know if you've formed an opinion on this and want to share it so that you can get death threats, Gavin, but I'd love to hear it.
Here's a death threat opinion. I think that we really have to be cautious about Taiwan, period, because there's a very good possibility that Taiwan could change hands in the next, say, 3 to 5 years. And this is like a scary thing, right? Like, in Taiwan is a place, obviously, that is a geopolitical hotbed. And I hope we did not just drag our YouTube algorithm by talking about it. But I think this is something that everybody needs to be aware of, is that a vast majority of chips are coming out of Taiwan. And I think that the faster that we can onboard them into American companies or companies somewhere else, in the same way that people offloaded clothing manufacturing or other things out of China when they started to see Chinese businesses start to get kind of pushed down a little bit by the government to places like Vietnam or different countries. I think this is a really important conversation. Obviously, you and I are not geopolitical experts, but I think it is something to track really closely. I think the other thing, Kevin, to think about here is there's one specific American company who might be really happy that all this stuff is happening right now.
Yeah, some are saying he's talking about Apple, specifically Timmy Apple,
Timmy Cook,
who might look like a genius just for laying back in the cut, to use some jazz parlance. It turns out
what laying back in the cut,
baby.
You're gonna have to do an explainer on that. Just
you
give us
can have
second.
Pilfered, and I'm having laying back in the cut. You know what? Hold on a second. Hold on. I'm going to do it right now. We're going to Groq Cloud. So, Gavin, I'm going to console.groq.com, hashtag not an ad, and I'm going to use the Deepseek R1 distilled llama 70 billion model. I'm going to say, explain to my co-host, Gavin, what laying back in the cut means with regard to jazz/music. And I'm going to let it think. In jazz music, in jazz or music in general, quote, laying back in the cut refers to a rhythmic concept where a musician plays slightly behind the main beat, creating a relaxed, subtle feel. This technique adds to a sense of groove and tension, as the musician is not strictly on the beat, but slightly after it. It's often used to add depth and nuance to the music, Gavin, making it feel more natural and less rigid. So
you're saying Tim Cook is back there with his stand-up bass,
right? The
playing
industry,
his fingers.
Yes,
I got it.
He's got a long filtered vape. It's not a cigarette at the end of it, but it's a long filtered vape because it's more techy.
Can somebody in our audience put Palmer Lucky's hair and goatee on Tim Cook and then put him behind a bass? Because that is the perfect image of Tim Cook laying behind the cut or whatever this is.
One of those celebrities, if they made it, I would love to see Palmer's goat, the goat's goat, on Timmy Cook. But the idea is Tim, yes, upright bass and beret, long filtered vape, laying back in the cut while the industry is marching to the beat. He's just slightly behind, doing his thing, nice and chill. Right. And the reason any of this matters is that it turns out this particular model, this Deepseek R1, runs pretty well on Apple Silicon.
And Apple Silicon is something that is way more powerful than a lot of people maybe have given it credit for, because most people think of Apple as like, MacBooks, but they've been steadily upgrading their silicon in a big way. And, this is another kind of possible issue with NVIDIA, that NVIDIA was really the place to drive a lot of this AI work, and their CUDA backend specifically. Apple now might have a leg up in this space, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And when you look at the reason people, I think, also saw Apple as a little bit behind it, because most of the AI tools were written for NVIDIA GPUs, specifically for their software and hardware stack. This is a shout out to Alex Chima over on X, who had a breakdown of the chips that can run Deepseek V3 and R1 on the market now. And basically, he broke down NVIDIA versus AMD versus Apple. Right, which is weird to see. Yep. Again, Apple chips in that race. Apple's M2 Ultra, which was released in 2023, it's the processor I have in my laptop, is 4 times more cost efficient per unit of memory than AMD, and 12 times more cost efficient than an NVIDIA H100. Now, this doesn't mean the industry is shifting towards this, but it does bode well. I keep seeing all these posts, Gavin, of people like stacking Mac Minis on top of each other and basically saying, "Hey, look, for $6,000 to $8,000, I just built me a cornputer that can run Deepseek R1, the full model, right here off the shelf. I basically got OpenAI in my server closet. That is why.
Yeah, which is, again, going back to those distilled models and being able to do stuff smaller than better makes a big difference. Kev, we should probably wrap up all of this conversation with a couple other big things that came out of China. But before we do that, this is your chance to subscribe. That's right. We are going to let you subscribe to our podcast this week. We're going to let you subscribe.
This is your only chance, and Gavin is very generously allowing you to subscribe.
I am letting you all. This is a chance to subscribe to our podcast. It's a 1-week offer. It shuts down next week, in which we will open it up again. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel right here if you're watching this. If you're on audio, please make sure you leave us a review on Apple iTunes. We got a couple new reviews. That was very nice of everybody. But this is your chance to subscribe, like, share. We only get seen by other people if you share us, because we are an independent podcast. Kevin and I make this ourselves. That is the one thing you can do for us. You're also welcome to drop some money in our tip jar on Patreon, but you don't have to. The most important thing is like, subscribe, and share for us, y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, really, it is the only way we grow is off the back of your kindness and engagement. So thank you for that. It's true. It's true.
Okay, Kev, these other stories that are pretty important, again, are all coming out of China. Something that kind of shocked me yesterday is there's another new Chinese LLM. There's a new Qwen model, which has been out already, but they updated it as the 2.5 Max, a large MOE LLM pre-trained on massive data and post-trained on curated SFT and RLHF recipes. All of that is kind of like, tech speak for it's a big model, not just a small model. And it actually is comparable, if not outpacing, V3, Deepseek's last model, not the reasoning engine, but it's outpacing V3, which is also outpacing GPT-4o. So Kev, just coming off the heels of all this Deepseek stuff, there's another Chinese model that kind of is surprisingly powerful. And I think it does make you start to think like somehow they kind of timed all this. I know it's also Chinese New Year's time, so I know that maybe it might be around that. But like, man, China is just coming hard right now with this AI stuff.
Oh, sorry, Gavin. I just, late breaking. I'm getting what sounds like Suno music from like 6 to 8 months ago, maybe a year ago. Another Chinese open source model has dropped. This is YUES17B, which is not sexy or fun, but it is actually pretty capable. This is an open source music creation model, again, coming out of China. And it's the Chinese word means music and happiness. I just
do you want to play a little bit of it? I think you're right. It doesn't sound perfect, but let's play a little bit of that to take a listen to it. I mean, it is funny.
Is that Tim Cook laying back in the cut?
He's still laying back in the cut, flipping his hair back and stroking his goatee with one hand and doing the bass with the other.
So what if his goatee is the upright bass? What if his goat goes so long to his goatee? Tim Cook laying back in the cut. His goatee goes down to the floor and he's playing it like the bass.
Oh my God. We've been brainwashed by China. I don't know what's going on here. So anyway,
anybody can make that. Please put that in our Discord, please.
This is an open source music model. So I think the one thing we haven't really seen come out of China yet is a music model that kind of took the world by storm. Now, granted, it does feel like a little bit behind Suno. Obviously, it's not as feature rich as Suno is, and Suno's kind of laying in a lot of features and doing a lot of things. But Kevin, the thing about China, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later when I get into Kling stuff in their video model, China does not really respect IP or any of that stuff. So I'm kind of convinced at some point that China will make a very good music generator, if not for the fact that they'll train on everything.
Yeah. 100%. Look, the sample that I played from the Hugging Face model host was a very little poppy kind of little ditty, but this thing can do all genres of music. It can do English lyrics. Make no mistake, it will get better. But the difference again was twofold. Yes, they'll train on everything. That's fine. Two, it is open source. So people will take this and run with this and improve this, and this will worm its way into every product ever. We talk about 11 Labs all the time on this show. They've got great voice models, voice assistants. They have a sound effects generator. They don't have a music competitor yet. And what traditionally 11 Labs does is take the best in class open source stuff, bring it in-house, and then improve on it as quickly as possible. There are going to be dozens of music services overnight that are going to probably fine-tune and custom train on their own genre, and make no mistake, they'll get better and better and better.
Counterpoint. I object, Judge. The counterpoint is, in this instance, the reason why a lot of these don't exist is because of the risk of lawsuits from the music industry. And I think that, honestly, you know what's interesting? Suno has continued to grow and build, and obviously they got a giant check. One company that we were talking a lot about early on that I haven't seen get another check is Udio, right? So I think there is a lot more risk involved with music, but so I'm not entirely sure 11 Labs wants to be in that business, because it's really hard to litigate and understand the music industry rights, and they are crazy. The music industry is insane. I don't know if you saw the story, but Spotify put the biggest payout ever to the music industry, which is good for the music industry. I'm not saying that they should get paid, but like, they are going to get their money. So I think the AI rights of music is even more difficult than almost anything else.
I think I think you are grossly misunderstanding 11 Labs. Their favorite thing is litigation. I know this. It's actually not voice cloning.
Is that true?
So they're gonna leap it. They love lawsuits, so they're leaping. No, that's not at all. Please sponsor us, 11 Labs. Please sponsor us.
Kevin just got himself in trouble at 11 Labs.
Just
so
welcome to
the red list.
I do work with them on the side. I'm being a dum-dum. They don't like it. That's fine. Hey, Gavin, let's talk about video models. How about that now?
Later on, we're going to talk about Kling AI's new feature. That is a Chinese video model that I played around with. But right now, Kevin, a company we talked about last week, Minimax, is dropping a new feature. It is only available for their early testers right now, but it is very cool. It is called the director feature. And what this is it gives you a lot more control over the camera, and it follows those controls really well. If you look at the video they released, you can see how it kind of like, you can directly tell the camera what to do, and it follows it. It reduces randomness in the movements. It enhances the control accuracy of everything. And the videos that you see in here, like a push-in shot, you see a zoom out, all these things keep the consistency of the characters. And so I've already seen people do some really interesting stuff. I do want to shout out Wuxia Rocks. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, who used it to create the Evil Dead shot, which is fascinating to see. Like, it can be fast. It goes through the forest
this
very
is a
quickly.
Shot through
you
a
see
forest
some
with
smoke.
like some smoke or fog. Yeah, there's like someone on an ATV, but like the camera is racing with this kind of exaggerated field of view. It's a beautiful shot.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And there's another great thread from Alex Petroscu, who does a lot of really good stuff. He has a shot of what looks like almost like an Orson Welles sort of film, where it's black and white and you see very clearly characters interacting with each other. It just goes more to the fact of like, we're going to get so much better control over these AI models. And again, Kev, what's interesting is this is all coming out of China right now. So this is like, China is stepping up their game in a big way.
Yeah. Look, we said prompt to Hollywood within 5 years. We might have been wrong, but for the first time wrong because we overestimated. We're seeing commercials now that are fully AI driven, and I think that almost counts, but like character consistency, camera control, lighting, all these directorial tools, even AI editing, this is all really coming online. And I don't know if you're noticing this, Gavin, but I'm feeling a shift. And I know that it's my own filtered bubble of bias, but whether it's LinkedIn or X or on Threads, I'm seeing a lot of, it used to be a lot of never AI, and now I'm seeing like hey, I experimented with this, and I'm starting to make that. Hey, I'm tooling around with this and I made this very quickly, and now I want to actually go make it as a quote unquote real project. Are you feeling that tide shifting?
Yeah, I definitely am. And, I'm speaking at NatP next week. I was invited to speak on a panel where I'm putting together a 6-minute presentation. So a quick thing. And my topic is going to be about speed to IP and how that AI is going to affect how we create IP and how IP will come out of the AI space more often. And again, we've said this on the show a bajillion times, but I'm definitely seeing that. I think smart people are starting to understand the idea that, hey, I could be an individual creator, or I could work with a team of 3 and 5 and make something really cool. And the whole point of when I say speed to IP, one of the things, if you've been following the entertainment industry for a long time, like obviously every major movie is now based on IP. There is no movie that exists out there that is not based on IP. And The Wild Robot's a great example. People thought, oh, maybe The Wild Robot is this cool new movie that's based on original IP. It's not. It's a book, right? So I think what's going to be interesting about this time in our creative lives is that people are going to be able to create IP much faster and then see if that IP is sticky and then double down on it. So I honestly think small teams, creative people who have done work in the creative space before are going to succeed in ways that you can't even imagine. And larger Hollywood might be in trouble, but the small teams who can iterate fast and create things are going to do very well.
Gavin, I couldn't agree more. How do we make sure that every possible butt is in that Nat P seat for you right now?
I will share on the show handle on X and a couple other places where it's going to be. And if you can come, that's great. If you're attending, obviously you have to be an attendant to come, but I would love to say hi to you. If you're a fan of the show, pop in and say hello to me for sure. Kev, guess what? It is time for one of our favorite sections of the show where we look at some of the stuff that people have done with AI and we shout them out and we celebrate them. It's time for AI See What You Did There.
Sometimes you're scrolling without a care, then suddenly you stop and shout, AI, see what you did there. AI, see what you did there.
Kev, there's a very great AI creator out there named AI Warper, who is the person responsible for the Travis Scott meme that kind of took the AI world by storm. They have dived into trying to create an AI influencer, and it's changed now, but I really did appreciate the fact that he started out by trying to make a female version of Asmongold, the famous video game streamer. And there's just a very funny clip he posted where like the female Asmongold is responding to the male Asmongold. And to me, this is like the perfect use case of AI. It's just a dumb, really interesting way to look at using AI influencers to kind of comment on other influencers.
Now, and part of it is a showcase of like lipdub.ai technology. Again, hashtag not an ad, but have you explored, they're claiming that lipdub AI is the highest quality lip sync and trusted by industry leaders like HBO is in there?
I've seen lipdub AI before. I mean, I think all these lipdubs, as you know, are tricky, right? Because like none of them are perfect. And it really is one of the things that's going to continue to kind of be a thorn in the side of AI. This is honestly why I think Act 1 is one of the best things you can use. But in that instance, you're really having to do the acting yourself.
Yes.
I just haven't seen a perfect AI lipdub yet tool.
I was going to say, as someone who loves Love is Blind, okay, spoiler. I do. I'm still amazed that when I fire up Netflix that there aren't like lip dub versions of the Love is Blind Germany and Love is Blind Brazil and Love is Blind whatever, right? They've had the subtitles and they have even the dubbed voiceovers, but where's just the press the button and it uses AI to make the mouths move with the voice of the person? We know that tech exists. I'm sure it would be expensive, but like what Netflix is raising prices yet again. What are they doing? I don't need more WWE. No shade to the superstars. I want to watch Love is Blind Germany, but in English.
I wonder if that is a big deal. Like I don't think about that because I do watch like obviously when I watch foreign shows like Squid Game, I watch with the original language and the subtitles because I can't stand dubs. But maybe there would be a better sense if the lips match the voices. But in general, I don't know. Maybe they don't do it because there's not enough of a demand for it.
Well, I'm demanding it now. Damn it! It's too hard for me to. It's too hard for me to read the TV while I'm scrolling TikTok during my favorite shows. Okay, I can't fragment my attention like the average viewer. Now, one thing I would watch in any language or dubbed in any subtitle, Gavin, is Indiana Jones filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a runway project. Yeah. This was on the AI video subreddit. You had seen it and it made you giggle and I had seen it and then we both completely neglected to shout it out. It is just scenes from Indiana Jones, but they added a live studio audience. It is exactly what it sounds like. And for some reason, it tickles me.
I think it's great. I want to watch other films in front of a live audience. Like, again, shouting out Citizen Kane or like, what would Scarface look like in front of a live audience? Imagine the Scarface scene where he's sitting at the desk and people are behind him clapping and so excited for him. Like, this might be a new genre,
Give me someone scrambling for the key to unlock the thing so they can get the bomb out of their stomach or whatever. Give me Saw with the live studio audience. But they took scenes from the movie and extended them with runway. And you could see the original versus the runway stuff, but watching uncanny audience members hunched over and clapping and giggling. If you're getting the audio only version of the show, go check it out. The link will be in the show notes. It is worth the click.
Yeah, shout out to Vague, Vaigue man, who's the person that uploaded this and created it on Reddit. So Kevin, the other thing I really want to shout out, we talked about Groq earlier. There is a X user that we've loved forever. We've shouted him on the show many times. His name is @_AKHALIQ. It's not the greatest name in the world, but he's always shared for like the last 2 years some really interesting stuff. And he put together a Hugging Face space where you can try R1 plus Groq. And my experience with this is kind of mind blowing. So and this is specifically about coding small apps. So if you go to the link that we have in the show notes, you can try this. What it is basically, it's just a box that says like, what do you want to create? You type in what you want to create, and depending on if the space is up, because it might be getting hammered at any given time, you can create a program in, once it goes through, 10 seconds. And that is insane. I'm going to get to this later in my Kling thing, but I will say one of the biggest difference makers of any AI tool is the speed in which you get results, because so much about this is, how do I iterate on the thing I got? Is it broken? Okay, if it's broken, how do I go back and fix it? And if you are waiting 10 minutes between generations, it is a disaster. You lose track of where you're going. Something else in your life comes up. But this implementation of Groq plus R1 feels like the absolute future. Did you have a chance to play with it at all?
Yeah, you sent me the link and I immediately fired it up and got in there. And even with everybody else poking and prodding at it probably at the same time that I was amazed at just how quick it was. And it reminds me of the llama distillation version that I was talking about earlier in the show that I was playing with. Like, the speed is a differentiator for sure. Obviously you want the highest quality result you can get from an LLM, especially if you're coding or something. You want it to be clean and workable. But then beyond that, I would say speed, even before cost, for me is the most important thing. Because to your point, you issue a command. I do a lot of coding with Cursor now. I will tell it what I need fixed or what I want to work on, and then I will sit there and I will wait, and I will sometimes get lost in the sauce. And if I want one tiny correction, I'm like, I got to go back and wait again. Having things happen at this speed, it's almost like we are going to have this gives you a glimpse of that promised future of like, hey, it's dinner time and we want to split the bill. Does anybody want to download an app for that? No, I'll just whisper this need into my phone and it will code the app for me, and now we'll all have it.
So yeah, I used this. The actually looks like it might be down right now, but this gives you an idea of how insane this will be going forward. And again, it's code at the speed of thought, right? And to your point, like not just splitting the bill, but like I used it to create something that we did back in the day, which was like a debate between two characters. And I said, hey, I'd love you to create an app where I can input two characters and then a question for them to debate about and have that happen. And, the actual result came back like in 20 seconds. And then it wasn't perfect. It didn't do it exactly in the voices, but you can see how once you can get results this fast in a coding platform, holy cow, you could make stuff so quickly. And I just think we're going to see interactive stuff like skyrocket in an interesting way.
I just want to interact with tentacles, Gavin. And I feel like...
Of course you do. That's what you've wanted for your whole life. That's your like dream
I feel
goal.
like Hent AI is not advancing fast enough. And then out of nowhere, Gavin, I am gifted an amazing video on X. And this
is insane.
It's from Zanchi Wang is the source YouTube channel. Spirobs is the channel, SPIROBS. We'll put a link in the show notes. But this is logarithmic spiral-shaped robots for versatile grasping across scales. And when you look at the video, you see what looks like a 3D printed octopi-ish arm performing tasks that are insane. I'm talking like grasping of delicate objects, catching balls in real-time motion, whipping. It can like knock things off of things. There's even like curling and uncurling. And then there's a version of it that's on a quadcopter with multiple tentacles. And the quadcopter will descend and pick something up or delicately drop it off. And it is wild to see this bio-inspired grasping arm flail about, but then have so much utility. They have robots that sprint and dance and do all sorts of things now. But when you think about these robots, they're trying to make articulated fingers and this, that, the other. But there's a world where we've got humanoid tentacle bots running around. that have a little thing that can extend from their belly or from their head or whatever and grasp a feather, an ant, or whatever. It's so weird looking, but so inspiring.
Well, that's what I was going to say here is that we obviously have been building humanoid robots to exist in the world that we create. And everybody's always like, well, why do you need to build a robot that acts and works like a human? Well, the argument is that we build the world for us to be shaped as humans, so that we need robots that can do this. And one of the things that's interesting about this is like, maybe this is what the robots would design themselves to look like, right? There are things in nature that are much more useful than arms. And in this case, what's interesting is it's clear that like it's very good at grabbing things. Like even the fact that it could grab a tissue out of a box, you know?
There are things in nature that are more useful than arms. Like put that on the box. You're so
but it's
right.
funny, like watching it, like the multi-tentacle one grab things. It's like, it looks like an octopus.
Okay. So I just texted you one that goes to the time code. Like, I would love for you to describe in real time what you're seeing, because it is exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so I'm seeing a manipulation. Oh, yeah, so this is what you're looking at is the tentacle dropping a ball into very specific locations, and it can get into different places, right? And that's really interesting. It's able to interact with something different than a hand could because it's so flexible. Now, I'm sure there are better things for hands, but like this could be where, you know, they always talk about AI, like work thinking about itself maybe more than for humans. Like when AI start programming themselves, they may be like, hey, a tentacle is way better than a hand because it can do X, Y, and Z with it.
Japan has run those numbers, and the answer is yes. They've known it for decades, buddy. All right.
You're right. You're right. Okay, so Kev, we're going to get into a little bit about what we did with AI this week. I played around with Kling's new feature, Elements, 1.6 elements, and people are out there talking about how impressive it is. And Kling is a very good model, and it is another Chinese model, and there's a lot of interesting things you can do with this. Now, Elements is basically the implementation in Kling of something we saw come out a while ago, and we played around with it, where you can take like the coat of a person, you can take a person's picture, and you can take another thing like a car or a desk and kind of have them all drive the scene, right? So that's a really interesting thing, is if you can take multiple things, say you could have a subject of a person and you could have a different outfit to put on them, and then you could have a location to put them in, that gives you much greater control over the AI video, except for, I will tell you, I had a relatively miserable experience about this. And Kling, which I pay for, I got a 1-year subscription for like $60 at Christmas. I have to say I've been relatively disappointed in over time, and it's not because the results are terrible. Generally, they are okay. We'll get into what the results of this specifically were. But Kevin, each Kling result takes 10 minutes to get. And this goes to talk about what I was talking about before with Groq, is that when something takes 10 minutes, you do not get the sense of progression. You do not get the sense of that worked or this doesn't work. And it becomes impossible in my mind to do creative work, because you can't, I don't know if your brain works this way, but like, I can't like put something in and then take 10 minutes off and then put something in and take 10 minutes off. It just, I will get distracted. And it felt unfortunate to me that this is the way we're working right now in AI video.
So, okay, assuming speed gets better over time, as it should, walk me through the process, though. Was it as easy as dropping in some images and then describing the shot that you wanted?
So it is very easy. The Kling interface basically has 4 boxes for you to add as many pictures as you want. So if you look at some of the first results, I love the picture of Mark Andreessen with his giant pointy head. That's something that I've been, I think is hilarious in some ways. So the other benefit of Kling is that you can use real people for better or for worse. So I took a picture of Mark Andreessen with his pointy head. He was holding his hands together. I took a picture of a space station. I took a picture of a space suit, and I said, put the man on a space station floating in zero gravity. And if you look at the first Mark Andreessen one, that was the initial result. So it got Mark Andreessen pretty well, right? That's pretty close to Mark Andreessen. And he's sitting in the same outfit he's wearing, not a spacesuit, on a space station with a beautiful space going by him. So this result, totally usable, but not really what I wanted.
Right.
I then did it again, the second result, and I even tried to go a little bit longer, and it kind of did the exact same thing. Like it missed the spacesuit, didn't put him in zero G. It did have his hands freeze together for some reason in this one for a longer period. But I don't know, you can see these, they're pretty good results. And if you had thought maybe that's what I asked for, you might be amazed, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was admittedly a little more impressed until you told me the ingredients that you gave it and what the prompt was. It was sort of like, well, it kind of put the person in the thing, but it seems like it ignored just as much as it got correct. But these aren't bad. Some of the other renders you sent, though, feel rough.
Yeah, so then I decided, one of the memes that's been going around about DeepSeek is Jane Yang. If you followed Silicon Valley, Jane Yang is a character from that who's from China. I decided to try to put him in a similar sort of area, and I put him into this space with a picture of him kind of replacing the Mark Andreessen photo, and I said a man is smoking on a space station. And what's interesting about this is that either it doesn't understand smoking very well, or smoking is something it doesn't get. But the smoking part looks bad. But again, Jin Yang is there in this first one, like the one where he's sitting down. That is Jin Yang with the beautiful, planet behind him on a space station. It got that. The second one, I added the element of having a panther next to him in a tuxedo. So it got the tuxedo, it got the panther, but then the face isn't really Jin Yang anymore. And the smoking still isn't perfect. It is better than the first time. In fact, I like how he puts the two fingers against it. Then I did one more render with a different tuxedo picture, but unfortunately I left the other face on the tuxedo model in this one. I didn't want this to be Jin Yang. Oh, sorry, I wanted this to be Jin Yang, and it used the model's face from the tuxedo and put a tiger next to him, not a panther.
And you didn't know that until almost a half hour later when you came back to your digital slot machine and found out it wasn't a win.
And that is the big thing is how many people would actually play a slot machine if you had to wait 10 minutes between each spin? It'd probably be better for human beings and terrible for Vegas, but you don't have the sense of iteration. And I think that's something we talked a lot about, how R1 and Groq is speedy. I cannot wait to see something where I can say something to a model. And again, I would love to just say this and not have to type it and have it be interacting with me in real time. I mean, you remember what we saw Kriya and all these other image models do where you can do image generation in real time. That's what I'm waiting for with video. And Runway Turbo is great. It's pretty quick. And Sora Turbo is relatively quick. But I really think this is going to change the way we make stuff when this becomes 2 to 5 second outputs. And I think that's probably coming. It's just a matter of scale.
When I can whisper a thought, give it elements or otherwise, and it gives me a wall of thumbnails that I could then go, oh, let me see what that one looks like. I click, it quickly generates a turbo version of the video, like a previs. And I can look at it and go, oh, that's great, except make the camera move a little bit faster and make sure the bow tie is blue instead of green. And then I click the button and then it goes, okay, and spits it off to the higher resolution model. Everything else is trashed. We move on. That is the speed and I think the workflow with which people are going to start building full movies, full scenes and everything. I think it's pretty incredible. It reminds me of, like you mentioned that you wanted to just use your voice and talk to it. I went out of my way to make Cursor use my voice this weekend for a coding project. And it's bizarre to me that it's just not more intelligently integrated into all the things, even like ChatGPT.
Me too.
If I write something, I want to click a button and quickly say, actually change this to this. It's so much faster than typing. And the whisper by any other name, which is a tool that will take your speech and transcribe it, is almost real time now. So I want voice control over all of the things in all of the apps. But I used Mac OS's built-in voice accessibility features to allow me to talk into the Cursor code box, basically. So I could click, I could say, start listening. My laptop starts listening. I dictate what I want. And then I tell it to go to sleep, basically. And then I press send on Cursor. But I sent you a project that I was jamming on. And
it was
over the course of about 3 days, I was able to, using some off-the-shelf prompts, I used GPT-01, their reasoning model, which could have been, Deepseek, the truth be told right now, and would have saved me a couple bucks. But I used OpenAI's O1 model. I told it to think through this thing that I needed to build, basically this app, and give me atomic level directions for a junior engineer. That junior engineer, by the way, was you. Well, no, it was Anthropic's Claude. It was Sonnet. Right?
Yeah,
I'm just the middleman.
Yeah.
I'm a layer of unnecessary just middleman. I'm the octopus at the switchboard in the cartoon that's just plugging one thing into the other. Eventually, I will not be needed for this. But so O1 came up with the plan. I put the plan into a file. I told Cursor to read the file and go through, ask clarifying questions. It did. And then I answered those questions. And ultimately, I just started churning out an app that was using off-the-shelf AI components to do real-time web search and generate imagery and interact with the user using their voice. And the speed with which I was able to get a proof of concept together, again, mind blowing to me as someone who doesn't do that as their core competency, really makes me reflect on like what the heads of state are saying in terms of coding as a career in 2027. I think there's definitely going to be a need for engineers that are competent, that can plug in things and make sure they're secure and that systems are intelligently integrated. But getting the actual coding work done, I feel like agents are going to really crush it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think coding is one of those places where, because it's technical, because you're using a lot of the same sort of plugins and the same sort of stuff, there will always be a place for super creative coders, right? There will always be a place for people who are innovating in code or trying to do stuff. But pretty much, a lot of integrated code, a lot of code that people are doing is not the most creative in the world. So I think you're right. Kev, that's it for today. We will see everybody next week. Hopefully we will not have another giant stock market crash based on AI. If we do, come here. We'll always fill you in on what it is. We will see you all next time.
Subscribe to our newsletter, aiforhumans.show. Bye.
That's right. Definitely. Bye-bye.